With just a couple of weeks separating us and UFC 229 now, the headlines have certainly been dominated by Conor McGregor. That's to be expected considering the amount of fame that surrounds him at the moment, but what about Khabib? Hardcore fans have certainly gotten to know him well over the last 6 years since he debuted in the UFC in 2012, but many new fans are being introduced to him for perhaps the first time. That's in part because this is only the second time he's ever headlined a card. The fiasco of UFC 223 when he won the lightweight title earlier this year was his first time. With him being from Dagestan, a republic inside of Russia, a world away and with plenty of language barriers, there's quite a bit fans still don't know about him. So that's what I'm going to discuss today. I'm Jason from MMA On Point, and these are 10 interesting facts about Khabib Nurmagomedov. Number 10, an extreme upbringing. Just being Russian is enough to invoke images of a rougher, all-around, more difficult lifestyle and an extremely harsh climate. But Khabib's background is another animal altogether. Much of Dagestan is buried deep in the Caucasus Mountains with high elevation and extremely cold temperatures. But the biggest factor of why it's so harsh is the history of the region. It was embroiled in wars with Russia throughout much of its history, and the country has been torn apart with terrorist groups invading the region since the 90s, with poverty plaguing many of its inhabitants. As a result, youth programs and gyms have been established all throughout the republic to keep kids off the streets and away from trouble. As an accomplished martial artist, freestyle wrestler, judo and sambo champion, and serviceman in the Ukrainian army, Khabib's dad, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, and his uncles established their own training facilities to keep Khabib and 15 other boys alongside his brother, relatives, and friends away from the world outside. It was ran like a 24/7 gym and army training camp rolled into one. And some of those training methods that they used have become infamous, namely Khabib wrestling a bear as a young child. Yeah, that really happened. He began formally training by age 6, and by the age of 17 he was fully involved in the Russian martial art of combat sambo, full contact, and began his mixed martial arts career at the age of 19, where his first 4 fights occurred in just 1 month. Number 9. Why does he wear that wig? Well, first off, it's actually not a wig. It's a traditional garb of the Dagestani culture where men faced the elements during battle and wore the head ornaments for warmth. It's made of thick wool and exists in different forms throughout the region, as well as in Greater Russia. As a result of its connection to various armies in the Caucasus regions, it had also been associated with manhood and a man's overall identity in the past. Alongside this, men would also wear an open coat also made of wool called a burqa that was also worn and would be easily thrown off in battle to quickly attack. In Khabib's case, it was offered up as a joke by one of his friends as a way to call back to their heritage, since it's not commonly worn in current times, and Khabib and his father liked the concept and decided to wear it from then on. Now it's one of the few trademark clothing gimmicks in an era of uniformity in the UFC. Number 8. His son was born on the day he fought. On the same day of one of Khabib's most seminal performances to date, when he fought Edson Barboza at UFC 219 on December 30th, 2017, his son Mabruk was born at 2 a.m. very early that morning. He actually discussed what the process was like on the MMA Hour just before he fought at UFC 223.
I find out after a couple hours when I sleep, like 2 a.m.
Did you feel bad? Did you feel sad that you missed it?
Why I need to be there?
I don't know, support your wife, be there, hold her hand, I don't know.
We have different mentality. I can ask for God, help her, and that's it.
There's really not much to say about this one. It's just crazy that he had a kid on the day of his fight, and perhaps even crazier was his reaction. And you can imagine his son will have a similar upbringing to his own.
At the sport, of course, he gonna wrestling.
Number 7, one of the most popular athletes in Russia. If you're a fight fan, you know Fedor is by far the most popular Russian fighter and is seen as the biggest legend of the sport. But Khabib is a massive star there as well. You can watch footage of him being greeted with mobs of Russians in any part of the country when he arrives, and one of the biggest indications of his stardom is that he just passed Maria Sharapova as the most followed Russian athlete on Instagram. He also has this quote from UFC 205 just to show you how big his homeland is.
Hey guys, Irish only 6 million, Russian 150 million.
So So if you're someone new looking into this fight and wondering who he is, it should be noted how many people he has behind him back home, and not only there, but there's an estimated 1.6 million Russian Americans in the New York tri-state area, with many that see him as a superstar as well. Number 6, he's extremely accomplished outside of the cage. In addition to being the current UFC lightweight champion in the sport of MMA, he's got plenty of accolades on his mantle elsewhere. He holds the most accomplishments in Sambo with 2 gold medals and 1 silver under the World Sambo Combat Federation, won the Combat Sambo Federation of Russian Championships with a gold medal in 2009, and the All-Russian Sambo Federation Championships as well. He's won 2 no-gi grappling tournaments with the North American Grappling Association in 2012, won the Army Hand-to-Hand Combat European Championship, and is a European Pancration champion to top things off. Beyond this, he has extensive training in judo as a black belt, boxing with Olympic trainers, and of course freestyle wrestling since he was a young child. As if that's not all enough, he also grew up playing soccer and basketball alongside regular swimming and gymnastics training that combined for an extremely active lifestyle, pretty much tracing back from the day he was born. His dad, Abdul Manap, tells the story of how he began involving himself in wrestling by wandering onto the mats at the early age of just 2, unprovoked, and started mimicking the exercises he would witness there in the gym. Oh, and just as a bonus, here are his thoughts on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Number 5, he's only fought 2 top 5 opponents in the UFC. While very few out there would doubt that Khabib deserves to be the current lightweight champion, it is interesting to note that the only top 5 opponents he's fought so far have been Edson Barbosa and RDA before he won the title a few years back. Otherwise, it's been Michael Johnson, who is ranked number 6 when they fought in 2016, and most recently Al Iaquinta, who was actually at number 11 just before UFC 223. Of the current top 15, he's only faced 2 of them. It's just interesting to note in comparison with many of his peers in the top 5. Most of them have fought just about everyone else in the top 10 in the past or in the current rankings. But of course, this is nothing in comparison to Conor McGregor, where he only faced Nate Diaz before fighting for the title, but that was even at 170, not 155, so he basically went straight to the belt. Kevin Lee also went up from Michael Chiesa to Tony Ferguson for the interim belt. So these aberrations do sometimes exist, and while some have made a big deal of it, the quality of Khabib's wins certainly justify his place at the top of the division. Let's just hope that Tony Ferguson fight somehow still happens down the line. Number 4, he's never lost a round in UFC competition. So it's well known and marketed that Khabib is undefeated, boasting 26 wins and 0 losses. An impressive feat on its own, but even more impressive is the fact that he's never lost a single round. In the UFC, he's had 10 fights with 4 finishes and 6 decisions. Of those decisions, he earned either a unanimous decision by winning each round with a 10-9 score or greater, basically meaning they scored him winning every single round. Going back to before the UFC, he was on a streak of 8 wins by finish and only had 4 decisions in his career back then, all also by unanimous decision. But there is one controversy in that bunch, and that's our next entry. Number 3, his takedowns were shut down in the past. In his fight with Gleison Tibau, Khabib was not able to score a single takedown in 3 rounds, and it's not like he wasn't constantly trying, he just wasn't able to get them. This fight went to a decision, and despite this, he earned a score of 30-27 on each of the judges' official scorecards. What's controversial about this is that both Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg thought he lost the fight and were shocked by the decision.
The corner of Nurmagomedov is getting urgent.
If he loses this fight, which we both think he probably will lose by decision, it's a learning experience for this young man.
Khabib, the Eagle, Nurmagomedov!
Wow! Wow, indeed. Whoa.
And honestly, I see where they're coming from. At the very least, it should have been a split decision with something closer to a 29-28 score in the final scorecards. And Khabib himself was actually taken down in the fight and was outlanded according to Fight Metric by significant strikes and total strikes overall. The argument for Khabib is based in the fact that he was pushing forward most of the fight and initiated grappling exchanges against the cage very often, although he usually wasn't attacking in those positions and they were broken up for inactivity most of the time. Either way, there are a ton of people that have seen that fight and still think he won, and it's pretty old by now since that was back in 2012, and he's got 6 years of wins separating himself from that fight in 2018. Number 2, he almost retired. If you look closely at his record, you'll notice he didn't fight between April 2014 and April 2016. The reason being is that he went through several injuries that included 2 canceled fights with Donald Cerrone due to a reoccurring knee injury, and in the first of 4 failed bookings against Tony Ferguson, Khabib pulled out due to a rib injury ahead of their fight. This was all very hard on him, and he expressed the desire to actually retire from the sport altogether, but his father convinced him to stay and pursue the title.
I remember a couple years ago, you were talking about retirement. You remember after the injuries, and he was the one who told you can't retire yet, right?
Yes, father say, how you wanna be retired if you have some problems and you wanna give up? Give up is easy way. A lot of your friends, teammates, me, everybody waiting for your title fight, and now you wanna retire? What is this?
It's just crazy to look back at this moment in time and think he could have retired and closed the book on his career after fighting RDA before the whole mess with Conor McGregor could have even unfolded. Surely we owe his father a debt of gratitude, unless you just really don't like Khabib. In that case, you can... Number 1. How he got the title. To call UFC 223 a debacle is a huge understatement. Not only were several fights scrapped from the card due to McGregor's antics, there were 5 different opponents weighed in front of Khabib during fight week. Tony Ferguson's freak injury tripping over a cable during pre-fight media obligations, Max Holloway, the 145-pound champion, being told by the Athletic Commission that he needed to stop cutting weight to 155 because they deemed him medically unfit based on whatever they witnessed that his team didn't backstage. Then it was thought to be Anthony Pettis, who ended up declining the fight. And then Paul Felder was rejected by the Athletic Commission based on his ranking. So finally it was Al Iaquinta that stepped up. One hell of a roller coaster. But what's also interesting is that Khabib won the title while there were still 2 champions present. Tony Ferguson was still the interim champion and Conor McGregor was still the undisputed champion. It was stipulated by Dana White that when the first punch was thrown that Conor would be stripped of his title and by extension interim champ Ferguson because he was injured as well. This is the first time in UFC history that anyone has won a title in this manner. Champions have certainly been stripped of the title in the past, but not during the fight and definitely not 2 of them at the same time. Since then this has happened again, or maybe hasn't happened, at least it was supposed to, with Colby Covington when Tyron Woodley fought Darren Till. The rankings on UFC.com still show him as interim champ though. So surprise surprise, it sounds like Dana White didn't go through with that one. But either way, before UFC 223 it was a completely new concept to strip a champion in this way, much less 2 as a fight started. So those are my interesting facts. For a lot of the big Khabib fans, much of this will be known to them, but I hope a few of you at least picked up a few new facts here. Was there anything important that I missed in your opinion? And then also, I want to get your picks for Khabib versus Conor. We're going to be doing a little bit more coverage as the weeks go on, and it'd be interesting to see if that changes for any of you over the next couple weeks. Thanks for watching my list, guys. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe and like. We upload at least 3 videos per week about MMA, and it really helps us out when you do so. If I missed anything on this vid, let me know in the comments, and feel free to follow me on Twitter at JasonTheHeart, or follow the official channel account at OnPointMMA. Thanks for watching so much, and I'll catch you on the next video.
Real knockouts or slick submissions are the most exciting aspect of mixed martial arts. Fights usually end with the standard finisher at the end of the allotted time, and when controversy appears, it's more often not outside of the actual fighting. However, not all fights go according to schedule. In rare cases, we end up with totally unique, one-of-a-kind fight finishing sequences that leaves fans discussing the